Hi, everyone. If you're just tuning in, my name is Jeannie Huang, and I am one of the senior product designers at Behance, and we're streaming to you live from Founders Lab in Brooklyn. I know we ran out of time for the last workshop. We were just so excited and had so many good questions, but replays will be available here at behance.net/99U later on in the day. So today, for the second workshop, I'm actually joined now by artist and designer Kelli Anderson. Kelli was in our first class of creative residents at Adobe in 2015, so we've been a big fan of her work for some time. And in this workshop, we're going to be talking a little bit about the technical aspects of paper design, and we're going to walk through also some hands-on activities. So Kelli, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here because I'm a big fan of your work, and I have also follow you avidly on Instagram. And so we're actually going to be taking some audience questions at the end of the segment, just like we did for the last workshop. So if you guys have any questions, you can throw them into the chat, and at any time we'll be going in and out of that Q&A and also spending some time towards the end. So this live workshop is called Materials for Computer People. And a lot of us spend our days, I mean, I do spend my day in Photoshop or InDesign or Adobe XD. But the goal of this workshop is a little different. It's to inspire us to jump between the digital and analog world and to really make things. So Kelli, can you talk a little bit about why we should be thinking about analog materials in the 21st century?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, we are all physical beings, and the way that we think about the world is often through a tinkering process where you try something, see if it works, push it farther, and listen to the reaction. So it's a very fundamental way that human beings want to engage with the world. But increasingly, we have these digital experiences that are, frictionless in multiple ways. And we don't have that part of our brain activated. So yeah, craft is still totally relevant and will continue to be relevant as long as humans are physical, I think.
And that's what you do, right? You do paper. I don't even know how to talk about what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would describe your work?
Yeah. Should I show you?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I brought some things. So yeah, here are a couple examples. Like this is a holiday card that, actually a New Year's card that I made in January that performs a magic trick by turning it. So it leads you through some instructions like a magician would and gradually takes away colors and performs this magic trick. That. Also made this completely paper pop-up book pinhole camera that actually works and you can develop photos with. And then this is a larger book with featuring multiple pop-ups that demonstrate different basic tech principles, but all rendered through paper. So all of these things are functional. This is an instrument. We have a decoder ring that shows the basics of encryption, a perpetual calendar, a planetarium. If you turn on the flashlight on your phone, it projects stars on the ceiling. This one is a speaker that works with your smartphone and makes sound louder. And then the last one is a spirograph for generating drawings. And I really like playing around with people's notion of what tech is and what tech should be, because I feel like you can create function using the knowledge that's been honed in these craft disciplines like origami, like weaving. A lot of these disciplines have been sort of relegated to craft because of who was doing them. Oftentimes it's female coded work or non-Western work. And just haven't had their full technical potential explored yet. So I like to surprise people by, showing them that you can actually just fold a piece of paper and make a camera that works.
Right. And the camera is something that we've always understood as something very digital or kind of mechanical. And paper is not supposed to be that, right? We've always thought of it as craft and very hands-on. And so I think it's interesting to kind of go between those two to connect what is a digital experience of a camera. Well, I guess you can have manual cameras, but there's some level of connecting disparate concepts together in a very physical form.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, some of the most cutting edge problems they're trying to solve in tech now, like at JPL NASA, they're going back and looking at wisdom from the knowledge system of origami to solve those problems. So I think we do have these biases in our society about like what is sophisticated tech and what isn't. And it's just, if you look at cutting edge science, it's just incorrect. So in part, like this is like a little bit like activism for me, but yeah.
Right. And in your full-length workshop, which is pre-recorded, well, you've had 5 exercises that will illustrate this concept. And so today we're actually going to go through one exercise, which you showed a little bit briefly in the book. So the exercise that we're going to do live right now is building a Volvelle. So could you explain a little bit about what a Volvelle is and maybe show us a few?
Yeah, sure. So first, I'll show you this one. So this is the one that we are going to make. And this is a very, very simple Volvelle because it consists of only 2 parts. So you have the layer that hides the information and allows little windows through. And then you have this other layer that carries all of the data. So I have a big pile of them over here. Volvelles were kind of like the apps of the 1500s through the 1800s because they performed one function and could fit in your bag and were super portable, but they could kind of only do one thing. So more like an app and less like a computer. So this one is a star explorer. So you can see exactly what the night sky looks like. You kind of turn it to select the month you want, and it'll show you exactly the stars that are going to be overhead. This one's for electrical engineers. This is all about calculating ohms. This one isn't rotary. The word Volvelle is actually it's a French word, and it originally described a lot of these rotary structures that were in these astronomical rare books from the 1500s and 1600s, where they were trying to show the movement of planetary bodies and did a way to do that. And so they started putting grommets in books and made them interactive. So I don't know if anyone remembers Radio Shack. Here's one from Radio Shack. This one has 8 functions. It divides, it multiplies, it computes interest, it figures out percent. You can calculate driving times, average speeds, fuel consumption, and distance between gas stops. So this is all for truckers, basically. So yeah, Volvelles, paper computers.
Yeah. I think the word paper computer really comes from this idea that we're programming something. I think programming is misunderstood in this sense because it's not that we're writing code, but we're really coming up with a pre-existing set of data and really inputting it into paper. So I actually took my own stab at making the perpetual calendar. So if you guys, there is a blank template if you guys wanted it to print out and cut it out yourself. And really, I guess, could we talk a little bit about the what we can do with this type of perpetual calendar? Like what would work for this?
Yeah, totally. So the basic idea of this, cutting it out is the thing that takes a little while. Putting it together is not so complex. Like you need to cut out both of the pieces, find a brad, ideally. If you don't have a brad in your apartment, like a twist tie off of like a sandwich bag works pretty well. You just kind of have to like bend it up into an eye shape, and then you stick it in the very, very center. And what this does is you look for your year. So we are in 2020 right now, and you line it up with the corresponding month up here, and it coordinates the days of the week, the numerical days with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you get an accurate calendar, and you'll get an accurate calendar for today until like the next 50 years. So you can plot out your, I don't know, 70th birthday plans right now. See if it's on a Saturday. Think about who you're going to invite. So yeah.
I love that because I mean, my version is literally just held together with a bread twist tie, like you said. And I think it's so interesting because we've always thought of these as this kind of computing as being something that you would Google, right? But what if you could have it in your house as a physical object to help understand how time works and how there are systems and patterns to data? I really love this.
Yeah, there's something kind of pleasing about the function being baked into the structure because it's like function that your eyes can follow. Like you don't have to know the programming language. You can simply take it apart, and see what it's doing. And you can do that without any specialized skill. You can do that whether you're a little kid. You can do that if you're a computer programmer. So I think these things are really fun, and it's something I know that my brain craves after sitting at a computer all day, for sure.
Right. I think there's something really nice about having a physical level to it. I think something we talk about a lot, just the physicality of things being really helpful to learning about data and the world that we're in. So I'd actually love for you to talk a little bit about our second exercise here. There are five total exercises that you've covered in the pre-recorded workshop, but for our live one, we're going to cover making our own custom Volvelle. So if you want to tell us about that.
So yeah, let me show you the worksheets first, just to give you an idea. So this is for this next Volvelle, it's a lot more complicated. It's not 2 layers. It is 5 layers. So we're going from 0 to 10. Yeah, so this is the backing sheet, and then there's a slightly larger wheel, and then on top of that, a slightly smaller wheel, and slightly smaller wheel. So go ahead and print all of those out and start cutting them up, and save the paper because it tells you the function of each wheel. Jeannie, do you want me to show them the completed one?
Yeah, I can actually even show you my printed out version. So I actually color coded them a little bit. I wanted to work alongside Kelly. And for people who are following from home, you can either print out the template from the link shared in the chat by our moderators. And if you don't have a printer, one suggestion Kelly made actually was to download the template and hold it up to the screen to trace the shapes. So here I'm going to follow along in making my own Volvelle in different sizes. So you can see the blue one is my largest circle, all the way going down to this orangey shade for my smallest circle. And I was hoping to kind of use the Volvelle concept to help people choose plants. Because really it's about taking a large data set, right, and being able to help people narrow it down to the actual answer that they want. So yeah, if you wanted to show us a little bit of what a completed one might look like, Kelly, as I kind of cut this out on the side.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you just the basics of how this works. So I can peel back the layers and show you. Actually, we're going to look under the hood first. So on my backing sheet, I have all possible outcomes on it. And then the wheels, as they layer on, what they're doing is winnowing down that full range of outcomes and honing in on the single answer that people are looking for. And the way, this works a little bit like an online quiz. If you've ever taken like a personality quiz, or, I think like self.com or l.com, like oftentimes has these quizzes. It's basically the paper version of that. And it's doing the logic just through these die cuts by showing you the decisions you're making through these little windows. And so let me put mine back together and I'll show you. It's funny because it's like, to understand it, you kind of have to see it taken apart. It's my initial inclination. But yeah, so the way that this works is we have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, going from the largest circle to the smallest one, is that basically you just turn the wheel to answer these different questions. And then each question will have a variety of different options. So let's just choose something real fast. And then you can see, once I have all of my answers in place, I get a little color right here. And that color indicates the answer. And so I have all of my color coding on the back. So I'm finding my light blue right here. And if I trace my finger out from the center of the Volvelle, all of the conditions I pass like apply to me. And so it's sort of like a little fortune telling thing, but it honestly, like, it can't tell you anything that you don't already know. So in that sense, like, it's kind of just like a dumb paper thing, but I've written mine in sort of human voice, and I wanted to do that to see if I could make it feel like it passed the Turing test. It was sort of like a hallmark of like computer AI design, is whether it can fool someone to thinking it's human or not. And so the whole point of this is to sort of help facilitate a philosophical conversation with oneself. That's what I use this tool for.
And so I think if we have it cut out, so I have mine partially cut out here as separate circles now. How would we start applying the first, narrowing down the first set of answers? I just have all of them as blank ones, and then I have a blank paper to kind of put it on.
Yeah. So I can show you on mine here. So here are all my different layers. I have my biggest wheel, my second biggest wheel, and then the two smaller ones. And so I'm just going to start by taking my largest wheel and putting it on top of my blank backing sheet. And we are going to color this in. I'm just going to grab any kind of marker. What I'd recommend is doing this with like a test set first, and then going on to create your final one. So this, I'm just kind of getting a feel for how it works. And so I'm going to trace this area and say, this is where answer 1 goes, right here. And when answer 1 is showing through that window, what is displayed down here in these die cuts? And the easiest way to get that answer is to just color it in. So let us see about the second one. So for the second one, I want you to turn so all of that green is out of view. So just a little bit until the green is out of view. But you'll notice now that my answer window is overlapping one just a little bit. So let's just advance. Let's advance one slot. So that's going to tell us where we should put answer number 2. And I'm just going to go ahead and color in answer 2 with beige right here. So when the user selects answer number 2, they are going to be, all the further wheels are helping them winnow down the choices that are displayed within this zone. Okay, so we have 2 more possible questions. Also, you don't have to have 4 questions, but I'm going to go ahead and put 4 questions on mine. Clearing answer 2, just going to go ahead and make answer 3 blue and color in these die cuts. I'm being a little bit messy, but you can be neater with yours if you want. Okay, so this is my final one over here. This is answer 4, and just filling in my little die cuts here with gray. Cool. All right, so I'm going to remove this just to show you what we did. We created a diagram now for where the answers fall, where the user is going to turn the wheel and highlight those answers, and then where the answers are going to peek through back here. And if we do 4 questions, 4 is the maximum because we're out of space here. If we do 4 questions, this is how they fall here. And if you do 2 questions, that's fine. It's just going to take up less space here, but 4 is the maximum number of questions. So Jeannie, how are you doing on yours? Are you making one over there? I'm interested in seeing it.
There's a lot going on here, but I think one thing, because obviously I didn't try doing this Volvelle the first time on live camera. That would be very brave of me.
Yeah.
But I did try making it at home in different variations first before doing it together. And one thing I found useful was being able to, I don't know if you can actually see this, but I actually use I use lines of color to denote each section. And I'm kind of thinking, so for example, in my Volvelle, if I'm trying to help someone select a houseplant in a L.com/style type of quiz, a question I might have is maybe something like, how many, for my large wheel would be like, how many hours per week are you willing to dedicate to your houseplants? Because I think that's like a pretty critical first step to determining what kind of plants you should get. And so I have a version here that kind of says on the outside for the answers that there's a version for 2 or more hours per week. That would be someone who's like an avid plant enthusiast. just like near farmer level. About 1 hour per week, which is still pretty involved. And so you kind of see that I've like highlighted each of these. And then if I turn it again, one that says 15 minutes per week, which I think is probably like the average person's willingness to engage with houseplants. But, you know, lastly, there's 0 time, no apologies, which is, I think, a totally valid use case, which is you like having plants around, but you realistically can't put any time to that. So those are kind of the 4 answers I have for the first question, which I think would be around like, maybe I would write something like, how much time do you have to dedicate to your houseplants?
I love that. I need this Volvelle because I always buy the wrong houseplants and then they die, and I feel incredibly guilty about that.
I feel like plant shops should have these Volvelles at the plant shop so that you could realistically look at it and understand what the limitations are instead of just buying something based on how it looks, which is, I think, something that a lot of people feel very compelled to because it's very visual for them.
I mean, there probably is an app for this, but it'd be more fun to have a paper calculator.
Yes, like a cool piece of paraphernalia for you to hold. And then, so what would you do with the second layer? I'm kind of looking at this second layer. So I have all my answers mapped out to the four blank spaces on the outside. And then what do I do with this second layer, which I have here in green?
Yeah, totally. So so the second wheel, this is the second largest wheel. I want you to put it down on top of this top one here. So we have our first 4 questions that pertain, our first 4 answers that pertain to this question 1. Handwriting, yay. Okay, so we have all of our answers that pertain to question 1 here, and let's put on our second wheel and see what's going on with it. Okay, so, all right, so our second wheel is going to be question 2, and I'm just gonna show you, so we're gonna do the same thing where we're going to line it up. We're gonna start with answer 1 right here. So we're going to line it up with the green, make sure all of the windows are aligned, draw in my little box. I've already like colored this in with a color field, so I'm going to use patterning this time. I'm going to say stripes are answer 1 on question 2. So let's go ahead, stripe this. So this is another one. So this is answer 2 on question 1. Let's make that one little dots. And then this is answer number 3. Let's do cross hatching. Then we'll be able to see where these answers fall. Cross hatching. Now I'm just going to do this for the combination of, you know, so on wheel 1, I chose answer 1. But there's also answer 2, answer 3, answer 4. So you'd have to go around for all of them and do that. But you can see here now on my guide. So, you know, if I turn the large wheel and chose answer 1 for the first question, and then chose answer 3, cross hatching, for the second question, I would end up here and here. So you can see this process of, you know, this first wheel is taken out like 75% of the possible answers that you do not want, and it's leaving you here. And then when you take this one, we're reducing it by 1/3. And so that's sort of the activity here, is that every single wheel, it's like, all right, do you want this one or do you want that one? And so it's a physical way of constructing and depicting a logical process. And you can make a quiz, but you can structure almost any kind of information this way. And people did. And that's why we have this like great variety of weird paper Volvelles and computers from history. So yeah, does that answer your question, Jeannie? And
yeah,
see what you're doing again.
Still fumbling, but I think for my second question, so my first question was how much time do you have to dedicate to plants? I think for my second question, I'm thinking a little bit about how much sun you get. Obviously,
good one.
yeah, I think both as New York natives, we know that that is in low supply in the average New York City apartment. So I think it's pretty critical. And so because I have three answers here, the three answers here are that you have a lot of sun, like you're bathed in sunlight. And then the second answer would be something along the lines of, you get partial sun part of the time. And then the third answer would be something like you get no sun at all. And I think part of what I'm expecting is I'm expecting to have to supply a lot of plants for these answers. How many answers would this Volvelle provide? Maximum amount based on this template.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look back here, there's like 75 or 76. I can't remember now. There's 76 different colors here. And I found that I was really limited by just the perceptual limitations of the eye to be able to differentiate between two different colors. Because like if you look at these blues, like they kind of look the same. And so, you can make more choices, but I feel like 76 is where it maxes out. And yeah, I to make it like even like so one of the things that makes it cooler actually than one of those online tests is that it doesn't just merely like shoot out an answer. Like when you choose an answer on here, you can see the entire spectrum of other people's answers and you can see their proximity. And so because of that, you can flip it back over and start questioning your choices, like making some changes and like seeing how making different choices like affects the causality. So yeah, it's kind of like it's a fun little thought activity in terms of like the relationship between function and structure and like user experience, and then also like just how ideas are structured. So yeah.
Yeah. I think someone in the chat said that they were using this Volvelle to come up with a pet adoption strategy, which I think is great. I think a lot of people don't really know what goes into pet selection beyond like, oh, I love how this particular dog looks or animal looks, but like what are the kind of constraints that I might personally have in my life that would change this pet ownership. And somebody else in the chat said that they were going to try to make a Volvelle out of wood on their laser cutter, which I think is just really rad. I think people are really diving into this workshop and being able to try different things on their own. One of the questions that we have for you there is, how would you get something like this Volvelle printed or die cut? Do you have any tips for how that would work for assembling it?
Yeah, well, so with anytime you want to cut something, it's kind of like how many do you want to cut? Because like these I had die cut because I was making a whole bunch of them. So I printed like 1,000. And so they made a die, which is basically like a long strip of metal. You send them die lines in Illustrator that are vector lines, and they turn those into sharp metal that they can then print the paper, put them in a press, and the sharp metal like comes and like hits the paper. And so a pressman will put it in and then take it out every time. But for doing it at home, if you're just making one, I would recommend just doing it by hand. I have a vinyl cutter called a Craft Robo that I use for a lot of paper engineering work. And it's really great because you can draw whatever you want on different layers in Illustrator and then send it out to that vinyl cutter. You can load paper into it instead, and designate different pressures for cut and fold or score lines. And so that's actually how I end up making a lot of things. But if you have a laser cutter, you can do the same thing. Like you can turn it up full speed to cut out different things. And then if you have a design that has fold lines, you can like turn it down to 50% and it works almost as well as like die cutting and scoring. Die cutting and scoring only really works well like if you're making a ton. Like it's not economically, it doesn't make sense. You have to run like 1,000 of something. So find a friend with a laser cutter. That would be the best.
As someone with no friends with laser cutters, I resorted to the X-Acto, and I'm here to tell you that it's worth it to try with an X-Acto and not a kitchen knife, which is the first thing I tried with and promptly ruined a kitchen knife. But whatever works at home to kind of make the actual craft happen. And so here I'm going to keep filling out the third circle. If you want to talk a little bit about that, I mean, it's the same concept, right? Just how many, maybe that we can lump together the third and fourth one together, and you can talk about that as I finish this.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let me get all of my little things. So I'm just gonna. It's funny to have this like professionally printed one next to my scribble one, but you know, they were all scribbles. It was a scribbly mess for months before I finally got the design worked out and printed. So you know, sometimes you just need to figure things out quickly. Okay, so I did question one, answer one. Did question two for that. So I'm just going to show you what happens with this third one. So, you know, this is, you know, I've selected answer one for question one and answer one for question two. And we have two green stripey things down here. So it's pretty predictable what this next wheel is going to do. We're selecting between this one or this one. So that's two questions. Let me see what kind of marker I can get here. So for this one, I'm just going to draw a border, a colorful border around it to designate where my answers are. So this is question 3, and this is answer 1. And yeah, let me just draw a border there. And then for answer 2, which is falling right here, let's do dotted lines. That'll help me see it.
We're going to run out of patterns at this rate.
I know, right? Totally. It's good if you have like an enormous box of markers. I have a semi-enormous box of markers. So, you know, this might be enough for you. You have question 1, 4 possible answers. Question 2, 3 possible answers. And then question 3 is 2 possible answers. So you're choosing between here or here. So that might be enough for you. And that will give you 25 different possibilities, I think. Wait, 4 times, no, more than that. 4 times 12 times 2, 24. So they'll give you 24 different possibilities. But if you want even more, then print out the tiny smallest wheel. And I'll show you exactly how this works. So this tiny smallest wheel, what it does is you can choose from this one in thirds. So I'm going to turn it all the way this way. So we have answer 1 right here. We have answer 2 right here. And then we have answer 3. This was the wrong marker for this, but yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and draw dots for these. You're floating away. Yeah, so you can see them right here. So this was 1, 2, and 3 in my floppy marker. But yeah, so you know, the reason that I did the die cuts this way and shaped it this way was because I had a first question with 4 possible answers. I had a second question with 3 possible answers. So the physicality of this is shaped to how what I needed. But once you make this and get into figuring out how it works, you'll be able to shape it to whatever kind of question and answer structure you have. But yeah, this one's pretty complex. So
Right. I'm still working on my third circle here, and the question I've chosen is because you said that there were only 2 answers. So I just asked, the question I asked was, how confident do you feel about your plant growing abilities? And then I just labeled one not confident and super confident, and I felt like that was a good enough A/B for people, right? And
yeah.
Instead of giving them a ton of options about how to rate their confidence level, you can just kind of generally switch back and forth. While I'm finishing this, I think somebody asked a great question in the chat about, do you think that young designers are losing the art of paper craft and the logical thinking that goes into this kind of creation? Like they're masters of Photoshop, but they're not necessarily well versed in paper. What do you kind of think about that? Because you also do teaching.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I find that my students are maybe they're a self-selecting group, but they seem pretty consistently thrilled about playing with physical materials and also like just applying their mindset as sort of digital natives to the material world. So I taught a class at SFPC where you know, we were the whole point of it was to observe the material world, think about how it works, and then figure out ways to like work with the grain of its natural function in order to program it. And so I think that there's like a lot of like fun possibilities and like kind of like subversive possibilities there, when you think about like what is it in the world can be controlled, can be programmed, and what can't be. And I think, you know, you can get in there and really like think critically and be creative with that stuff and like make really cool work, like really cool design work and really cool artwork by asking those questions. And I think the first step is just sort of like noticing that this boundary we put in between materials and craft and technology is rather arbitrary, and just knocking it down.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of maybe a project you work on that does that subversive digital paper kind of shift, and where it kind of really shows that people aren't, that border is not as clear as people make it out to be?
Um, yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, definitely like this project is pretty literally that. And we haven't actually gone through the content of this. Should I interview you using
Yes.
this Volvelle, Jeannie?
Yes. Now that we talked about how to make a basic one, I'd love to kind of see what your actual printed Volvelle does and what kind of questions it generates.
Yeah, totally. So the question that this one asks is, should I take that job? And I call it the existential calculator, because as a freelancer, people are always emailing me and saying like, hey, do you want this job? And usually I'll read the email and be like, some parts of that sound great. Some parts of that do not sound great. And it would be wonderful, I thought, if I could like outsource this big decision making to some kind of paper device that would crunch the numbers, and I'd be able to see what kind of outcome I would have if I accepted that job. So, you know, familiar with the format? It's 4 questions. So, how about I ask Jeannie those questions? Jeannie, what's the last job that you were considering?
All right, I have a job in mind where I was hired as a freelance florist for a photo shoot. So I have this, yeah, I worked on it maybe a year ago. And so I just have it very clearly in my mind where I was questioning whether or not to take the job.
Okay, cool. So just like envision that, keep it floating above your head, and I'm going to use this paper calculator to interview and then tell you whether you should have taken it or not. Cool. Okay, so the first question is all about working conditions, because obviously working conditions are important when deciding whether to take a job or not. So when considering the working conditions, you caught yourself wondering, A, is it actually work if I'm having this much fun? B, what kinds of snacks are we talking about here anyway? C, is 9 to 9 really like a thing? Or D, do I get to work in an actual sweatshop too? Hopefully it wasn't D.
It was not D. I think I probably went with C, where I was kind of shocked by the hours. You know, it was kind of 12 hours of constant rigorous work, and I was pretty surprised by that.
Yeah, photo shoots tend to do that.
Oh yeah, and the hours only add on. It's never like, we're never like, oh, we wrapped early. It's always like, do you have a hard stop at the end of this?
Yeah. Okay, so the second question in evaluating this job is, how much will this work improve things? Is it good for the world or is it not? And so this calculator in its conversational tone, answer A, it's not like curing cancer, but it's close-ish. Or, meh, it's like mixing homeopathy with cold medicine. Or, it's literally like we're selling diabetes to children. Again, hopefully not that one.
I love these answers because, like you said, you're trying to make it colloquial, make it sound like a human, and it makes me think because it's not just like on a scale of 1 through 10, how would you rate your usefulness? It's it makes me kind of think about like which one is it? And I think for me, it's probably the middle where we're doing a photo shoot and it's beautiful and it's really adding aesthetics and beauty into the world, but it's not necessarily um, trying to serve a greater purpose. And maybe that's okay, but that's just like the nature of that particular shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. Sure. Yeah, this one is sort of like it's a dramatic spectrum. It's either you're curing cancer. Yeah, anyway. Okay, so the next question, well, we're probably waiting for this one. This is all about fit. So, is it in your wheelhouse? And the answer is either A, fits like a glove, or does not fit like a glove.
I think for me, it's definitely fit like a glove because it was the kind of photo shoots I was kind of hoping for and I was really anticipating to do. And it was just kind of surprising how much, as I was doing the work, I do floral work and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to make flowers with nice, next to nice, like beautiful dresses. And I think that's really lovely and wonderful what I came up with. And I loved that experience.
That might be reason enough to do it.
Beautiful flowers and
Well,
beautiful
yeah, I guess if
things.
the other ones aren't too far off in like the extreme category. Okay, so there is one last question to answer. Always important to talk about money with work. So this tiny wheel, this very top wheel, asks, so what is the money like? And it encourages the user to answer in song. So, so it's either, is it a hip hop lyric about making it rain? Is it B, a Bruce Springsteen lyric? Or is it C, a country lyric minus all of the heartbreak?
Oh, I think it's definitely a country lyric, but with the heartbreak. I remember thinking distinctly that it was incredibly low pay. I was just like, wow, everyone is okay with this apparently because nobody was saying anything. So I think, yeah, I'd love to know based on my answers where we ended up.
Okay, so this psychic, not actually psychic, just a dumb piece of paper thing, says that you are in the zone of sort of a dark green. So where is that dark green? Okay, I think you were right here. So you were on the border of the aisle of suffering for someone else's art. You were going to get some character building from this experience. Let's hope you like microwave ramen. But then you're also down here in the highlands of increased project control. So that reflects your satisfaction that it was actually something that gave you pleasure. You enjoyed doing it. You felt creatively gratified. You were just exhausted and got no money.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
relate to this.
Yeah. So
I
it
felt
told
like it
us
was
what we already know.
no, but I think that's great because it's not just pumping out an answer that we know, but also helping us reframe those questions as like, look, here are some of the questions you should really crucially think about as you go into this. And
Yeah, it's hard to keep everything in your head when you're trying to like weigh everything. And, I think that oftentimes people's friends function this way where you talk to a friend and they're like, yeah, so what's the money like? I remember you were having trouble paying rent. You're like, oh, but I really want to do it, and then like usually your friend talks you out of it. But like, we're all in quarantine. So I don't know. pretty useful right now.
Yeah, I wish this was available all the time to help me make those decisions. I think on my side, I finished wrapping up my little Volvelle. I didn't fill out everything, so you can kind of see I only have a few. Oh, it's like really blown out. So it's kind of hard to tell, but I only have a few things answered, and I'll just walk you through what I did when I put in this my little center bit. But essentially, I ended up with the last circle talking about style. So the question I chose was less beautifully worded than your lyric one. But essentially, I wanted to know if people had a specific style that they were looking to have their plant fulfill. And I just narrowed it down to 3 styles that I thought would be kind of general, like generic. I think I said boho rustic as one, and then minimal as a second one, and then mid-century modern, because that's really popular. So I'm going to pretend to use this Volvelle, maybe on a hypothetical New Yorker, and we can kind of, since we are streaming out of New York, we can kind of see what the Volvelle recommends. I only have a few options up here. I didn't fill out everything, but so a hypothetical New Yorker probably has 0 time and no apologies for how much time they're willing to dedicate on a houseplant. And for
I'll
sun,
back you up on that.
just like, look, this is just my life. For sun, they live in complete darkness. Maybe it's not that they actually are in complete darkness, but they're finding a plant in a spot in their house that is completely dark. Like in my bathroom, I don't have any windows. It's just fluorescent lighting, so that's okay. And then for a confidence rate, let's say they're actually pretty confident. They feel good that, they had a good track record with plants. And then for style, I set it to be mid-century modern. And instead of doing colors, because I kind of didn't have enough of those markers that you had, I actually just labeled them with in alphabetical. So this one just says A, and then my little slot shows like a teeny tiny A written inside. And then for A, I just wrote, for someone who is living in complete darkness and has 0 time and loves mid-century modern styles, I recommended a plastic fiddle leaf fig. And I know that's a very unpopular opinion as someone who loves plants to suggest to another person to make a plastic one, but I think ultimately that's a realistic suggestion. If you live in complete darkness and you don't have any time, plastic is or not plastic, but it can just be like a fake plant. I think is a totally acceptable option for people that is not often considered. And in this Volvelle, I'm allowing you to consider that as an option. And that if you don't feel comfortable owning a plastic plant, maybe you could kind of switch around some of the other things to say, okay, fine, I'll spend a little bit more time on this, or I'll find a place with more sun, and maybe I'll get something that is more aligned with what I kind of expected from the houseplant. But at least you wouldn't be surprised.
I love this. And if you wanted to turn it into a full-on Brooklyn joke, you could make all the answers fiddle leaf fig. So they go through the process of answering the whole thing.
And the whole thing is just fiddle leaf fig.
It's all fiddle leaf fig, yeah.
Half the answers are plastic for those who are low confident or have no sun and have no time. And then the other half is just get a fiddle leaf fig. This is a West Elm inevitability.
Right, totally.
One of the questions in the live chat, so you guys, you can keep throwing questions in the chat. So one question that somebody asked is, has there been anyone who inspired you, Kelli, to rethink these boundaries between digital and analog? And is there anyone you look to when you kind of approach this programming, paper, coding analogy?
Yeah, I mean, I get inspiration from a lot of places. I think the person who in my personal life who pushed me to think more about these questions is a friend named Pamela Liu, who I co-taught this crafting material logic class at SFPC. Her work is all about the history of weaving in computation, which you don't usually think of those two things as being connected, but they are actually very connected. And in fact, the reason that circuit boards look the way they do is because of the history of weaving. And so, working with Pam, and then also, just looking at pop-up books and playing with them. And I made a project a couple of years ago where I created a wedding invitation that worked as a functional record player. And I thought it was really cool. But then I put it on the internet and it went like viral. And so I realized that I wasn't the only person who was like really amazed with this stuff. And that's why I keep looking further and further. But yeah, a lot of artists play with that boundary. And that's the thing. It's like really fun to make art about things that we take for granted, that are wrong.
Yeah, I feel like, you're pushing that boundary of where people have traditionally thought of this medium as being one very specific thing. Like origami, for example, in the States is often talked about for children classes. And you're here to say, like, no, let's subvert that idea. Let's think about weaving not just as handicraft or physical, like hobby manifestations, but to really think about where they intersect with technology, especially because a lot of us are working deeply with technology. We're not thinking about how the tech that we ended up with was influenced by these other mediums. And like we're going back to that and saying, okay, great, where does this actually come from? And
Yeah, totally. And I think that like just the history of tech, like a lot of times, like whatever the dominant civilization was, like their technology won out. And so it's interesting because now that we are creating spacecraft, we're going to nanotech, like traditional Western engineering with like gears and pulleys and levers don't work as well because that stuff doesn't scale. You can't make it giant. Versus the mechanics of paper engineering can be scaled up dramatically and it still works the same way. So it's cool, kind of cool that there's actually an activity on the JPL NASA site where you can create a spacecraft they're sending up, and it works the same way, like in the palm of your hand. I actually have this. It works the same way in the palm of your hand as it does in outer space. This is a space shield, so they can take photographs of distant planets and like shield out the light. And so it goes up like this, and then when it deploys, it gets big like this and blocks out all of the night light pollution from the other stars. So
and people are asking if there's a degree for paper tech or if you're going to do a masterclass online. Like what are your thoughts about this?
well, there's not a lot of us. There's a whole lot of folding and unfolding problems in the world, so there's more interest in this. I would Google Eric Demain. He's at MIT. He was like the youngest professor at MIT, and he is an origami guy. There's a documentary called The Origami Revolution that's on PBS Nova that talks a lot about many of these issues. But yeah, it's oddly, it's like not a discipline. So in more fields in biology, they're finding that protein sequences come folded. So that's a folding unfolding problem. We're finding that that's how leaves and flowers bloom, is by unfolding. So there's so many things in our world that work more similarly to how paper works than how traditional tech works. And so it'll be interesting to see where we go as a society in trying to understand those things more. But no, there's not a department at any school that I know of. I think MIT is the closest because they have Eric Demain and his colleagues. But yeah.
Soon, the masterclass of Kelli Anderson. I'm ready. I'm already ready to be the TA.
That's awesome.
Kelli, thank you so much for joining us live today. I know a lot of people are really excited to see your work and to see it, in the book form, especially. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us before we kind of wrap up this segment?
I guess one last little thing is if you go online, there are even more worksheets to help you think through some of these problems. And so one is to like assess what you consider digital, what you consider physical, make a list, and then figure out how to turn it into an object. So this is a paper animated GIF that I made. So it's like a looping GIF, but it's made out of paper. Just combining all the things that I think is fun from the digital world with the analog world. And then there are two other worksheets, one about turning observations into numbers that you can then use in different art projects, and understanding rule-based art and then executing your own rule-based art. So yeah, definitely check that out. I'm also like obsessively on Instagram. If you have any questions or run into any problems, I am Kelli with an I, Kelli Anderson, and I actually check DMs and chat with people all day. So if you have any problems, like I'm here.
Thank you so much, Kelli. I mean, we're so stoked. Everyone in the chat just loves to see your work come to life. It's so obvious when you're showing the flasher or the GIF what's happening. So as a reminder, you can find Kelli's full-length workshop along with all of this year's talks at b.net/Jeannie9U, so you can always go there. And then up next at 3:15 Eastern Standard Time is our afternoon session. So we're going to be featuring talks about power and purpose for the creative self. So thank you so much, Kelli, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me. This was fun.